It's prediction season around college football, and Sports Illustrated are trying their hand at predicting 5 bold things for Purdue in 2026. So, are those fair? Are those realistic for year 2 of the Barry Odom era?
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the #1 sports podcast network where it's your team every day. As always, I'm your host. I am Nick Arvin. I'm talking Boilermakers every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the only daily Purdue show out there, and we have a fun episode headed your way today because it is prediction season. And good friend of the show, Dustin Schutte, covers the Boilermakers over there on Sports Illustrated, has put out 5 bold predictions for Purdue in the 2026 football season. So we're going to be reacting to those, see which ones I agree with, which ones I don't. And then in the second segment, I'm making my own predictions. I'm going to make some bold predictions myself for how I see 2026 playing out for the Boilermaker football team. We'll wrap up today's episode, continuing our preview series, going on to game number 7 of the year. We'll preview the Washington Huskies as we're now just not 8 days. 8 days. Sorry, the math wasn't math. And we are 8 days away from college football before Purdue kicks off their season against Indiana State. So before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. And good friend of the show, Dustin Schutte, has been very gracious with his time quite a few times to join us here on Locked On Boilermakers and talk some Purdue. He's put out 5 bold predictions for Boilermakers on SI regarding what he expects Purdue to do, some hot takes he has for Purdue football in 2026. So I wanted to go ahead and go over some of those predictions and kind of figure out, is this something I'm behind? Are these some things that I agree with? Just overall, my perspective on Dustin's bold predictions. And the first one he has is probably the most bold prediction of all. It's, will Brock Brownfield earn Big Ten All-Freshman Team honors? He says that he will. He says that Brock Brownfield will earn all Big Ten freshman honors. And if you guys aren't up to date on Brock Brownfield, that's okay. He is an offensive lineman going to be a freshman this year. So very young guy. And this has kind of been a conversation for quite a while now about who's going to be on that offensive line. Really only Boaz Stanley and Joey Tenona are the two that have secured or seem like they are locks to be starting on that offensive line. But throughout fall camp, Brock Brownfield has been a guy that has earned some reps with that first team alongside Boaz Stanley, alongside Joey Tenona, which is where this take comes from, because surely if Brock Brownfield is capable of starting at offensive line in his freshman year, he's going to be a guy worthy of all Big Ten honors. And I have to say that I do agree with that. If Brock Brownfield does end up starting on the offensive line and is consistent on that front 5, then by all means should absolutely be an all-freshman Big Ten nominee. And I think that he would be that. But the big question right now is, can Brock Brownfield throughout the course of the fall and then going into the regular season play good enough football as a freshman to start at interior guard over guys like Mekhi Sinai or Mike Abanivos, guys that come over from USC, or Mason Vicari, who comes over last year, Ethan Trent. There are some pieces at those interior guard spots that Brock Brownfield is going to have to go up against. So I don't think it's a matter of if he starts, will he be an all Big Ten freshman guy? It's, will he be able to start long enough on this team? Will he start at all in order to get that nomination? But if he starts, I would agree with Dustin. Brock Brownfield will end up being a Big Ten all freshman team honor. The second take that Dustin has is the rushing attack of Purdue will average 150 rushing yards a game. Now, this is a big one. That is a big number, 150. But honestly, this is one of the easiest ones I have, because I 100% think that will be the case. You look at the running backs that are on this team this year, Fami, Ijeobi, you've got Jerrick Gibson comes over from Texas, Antonio Harris back for another year, Travis Terrell comes over from Jackson State, and then you have Ryan Browne, who can also get it done with his legs. And when you look at all of those guys, 5 guys that are capable of running the ball, that 150 number doesn't look as big as it initially did, because I genuinely do think Jerrick Gibson, Fami will be that 1A, 1B duo out of the backfield. Fami is going to be that guy that wants to kind of tire out these defenses with these physical runs between the tackles, and that'll open up opportunities for Jerrick Gibson to have that home run run where he just breaks everything open and scores a long touchdown. That will be the dynamic this year. I think both of those guys will get up to that 150 number, but where I think the cherry really gets put on top of this running game this year is that when you're more run heavy, it opens up opportunities for Ryan Browne to do the things that he's best at, which is operate within that play action, which is to find that consistent ball, not necessarily have to force stuff. And then most importantly, run that option play, be able to improvise, be able to make reads, be able to operate within the RPO and find success as a quarterback who can also get it done on his feet. I think that's going to be a jump we see this year for Ryan Browne. So that 150 number doesn't seem too bad with all those factors included. The third take that Dustin has is Xavier Townsend will establish himself as the number 1 receiver of this team. And this has been another conversation that we've been having here on the show, is that one of these guys needs to step up and be that number 1 receiver. And when you talk about the conversation between a lot of people high on Asad Wasim, I've said, well, Xavier Townsend is a similar type guy in the slot. I think Xavier Townsend might prove to be just a little bit more ready as of right now than Asad Wasim. So from that perspective, being that slot guy that's going to find consistency, very twitchy, quick, can get the ball quick, all of those things point in the direction of Xavier Townsend, but I'm going to disagree with Dustin here, because I actually think Denylon Morissette is going to be that number 1 receiver this year for Purdue. Now, he has a lot of question marks surrounding him. Comes over from Georgia, goes to Purdue, not a whole lot of production, and then last year was going to be a starter but was injured. This year, I just see him having that breakout season. He has more chemistry with Ryan Browne than any other receiver on the roster over the course of their time together at Purdue. I think that he has a lot of skills, and that's the great thing this year about Purdue's receiving core, is that everyone's a little bit different, and that's what you want with your receivers, is you want all of those guys to be a little bit different. BZ Owens comes over from Penn. He's that physical guy. You've got Xavier Townsend in the slot, same with Asad Wasim, and then Denylon Morissette is that player that is a great route runner and has great hands, can make plays happen in those medium intermediate routes. And I think that'll be very valuable for this team. So I am going to disagree with Dustin. I think Denylon Morissette ends up establishing himself as the number 1 receiver. Number 4, the defense gets to 30 sacks, 24 sacks last year for the Purdue defense, for the Purdue edge rush. This is one I'm 50-50 on, because no doubt they're going to be better. They will be better. The defense as a whole will be better. CJ Madden, Elo Madoze, 2 former Georgia Bulldogs coming off those edges. There's reason to believe that 30 is definitely achievable. I just want to see how this Kevin Kane defense operates. The talent is there. I just want to see how he utilizes these guys first. I'm leaning towards, I think that is likely, just because you also have Charles Correa, who had 3 sacks last year, and there's no telling how he's going to be used, as talented as he is. JoJo Hayden, Winston Berglund at linebackers, 2 very physical guys. On the inside, Kurt Neal, Rodney Laura, UCF and Illinois transfers that can rotate in. But ultimately, I see 2 former Georgia Bulldogs, Elo Madoze, and I see CJ Madden. And ultimately, I think that those guys can certainly make it happen in terms of getting to the quarterback. So I'm going to agree with that. I think that Purdue could very likely get to 30 sacks on the season. And the final one, this is going to be the one that gets a bunch of buzz. It's Purdue will win 3, not just regular games. They won't just win 3 games. They will win 3 conference games. That's what Dustin of Boilermakers on SI says. And honestly, man, this is tough. This is tough. I do think they will. Now, in my schedule prediction, I have Purdue beating Minnesota, Maryland, and Wisconsin, which is those 3 games. I could see the Wisconsin game going either way. Obviously, Purdue hasn't beaten that team since 2003, so that's going to be a tough matchup for Purdue, even with Wisconsin not necessarily being the Badger squad of previous years. That will still be a tough game for Purdue, even at home. But the reason I agree with this, even though I could see that Wisconsin game going either way, is some of these other games. You got UCLA on the road, Washington, Iowa on the road. Now, you're not going to win those games. Most of them probably not going to win any of them. But I think Purdue can at least hang around in those games. So just looking from a preseason perspective, I like the fact that Purdue has opportunities against teams that aren't at the very top of the Big Ten, but are kind of in that mid tier, higher than where Purdue's at, but still opportunities. And we'll get to Washington here in a little bit, but I think those are good opportunities for Purdue to at least try to pick up an upset or pick up a conference win. So I will agree. I think that Purdue gets 3 conference wins, ends up about 4-8 or 5-7 on the year is kind of a good prediction of where Purdue will be. So ultimately, I agree with a lot of what Dustin from Boilermakers on SI has to say about his bold predictions for Purdue in 2026. Leave a comment down below if you agree with him. And then coming up here next, I'm giving out my bold prediction. So leave a comment down below if you agree with me. That's coming up here next on Locked On Boilermakers. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit because people are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have already made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Obviously, you're probably not going to be able to find a coach like Matt Painter on Indeed, but for your job, you can find something close because you can spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all the boxes, less stress, less time, more results when you need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? Well, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. We talked Dustin Schutte of Boilermakers on SI, his predictions. Now it's time to get into the Locked On Boilermakers predictions. My bold predictions for Purdue in 2026. How I think this season's going to play out. Some things that I think will happen, won't happen. And overall, just some things I have a little hunch about. Maybe they don't come true, but who knows? Maybe they do. And we'll start out with the first thing. And this has been I've talked quite a lot about this since he comes over to Purdue in the transfer portal, but there have been a lot of people saying, hey, Fami Ijeobi, he's going to be the starting running back for Purdue. He will be the bell cow. He will be that feature running back for Purdue in 2026. But there's this little part of me in the back of my head, and I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's there, but for some reason, I just see Jerrick Gibson's name. I see what he did in high school. I see the kind of player he is. I hop on College Football 27 and I play with Jerrick Gibson. There are just so many different things about Jerrick Gibson that make me think he's going to lead Purdue in rushing. I don't know why. It's just there for me. He's so quick. He's so agile. He's a threat in the passing game. He's a threat to go outside, bounce the ball outside, and just break runs open. I do think that Fami Ijeobi is going to be probably that third down back, probably be the physical back you maybe run out at the start of the game. But as the game progresses, I see Jerrick Gibson going more and more and more higher and higher volume, getting more and more opportunities to just break the game open. So although Fami is certainly going to get at least 50% of those handoffs, maybe 60%. I think at most it'll be 60-40. And with that, I just see Jerrick Gibson having more yards per carry than what Fami is going to be able to do as more of a physical rusher. So this is one I've got. I think that Jerrick Gibson ends up leading Purdue in rushing yards come the end of this year and ultimately ends up being one of the more explosive players, one of the more explosive running backs throughout the course of the Big Ten. The second one that I've got, and this is I'm going to try to figure out how to explain this as best as I possibly can. But it's that Purdue upset somebody this year. Purdue upset somebody throughout the course of the regular season. And I'm not talking about Wake Forest. I'm not talking about Minnesota. I'm not talking about Maryland. All of those games are pretty much pick'ems. Maybe Purdue is a slight underdog, but I'm talking about an actual upset, an actual game where the line is set 7 to 10 points in the other team's favor. That Purdue is an actual dog. Purdue actually upsets this team, and it's an actual big win for Purdue. Not saying that Wake Forest or Minnesota, any of those other games wouldn't be big wins, but that just this would be a ginormous win for Purdue. I would put Wisconsin in that category of being an upset. Not a huge upset because, once again, Wisconsin shouldn't be all that good in 2026, but still not beating the Badgers since 2003. That's going to be one that I would consider an upset. One that I really have been getting more into, and there's a couple of them. Number one, it's Washington, and we'll get to that here in a sec. Washington, a great football team, one of the better teams in the Big Ten. I would say they're at the top of that mid-tier when you talk about these Big Ten teams. Washington's great quarterback, great scheme. Ryan Walters over there, so that's interesting. But it's a short week. It's a Friday night game. Washington traveling over to Ross-Ade. Last year when USC traveled, they started out a little bit slow. So could that be the same thing for Washington? We're going to have to see, but I'm just saying the makings for an upset are there. Washington, a much better team on paper, but things like that start to come up. Illinois, which is going to be a team that doesn't have Luke Altmaier, doesn't have Hank Beatty the way that they did last year and just slice Purdue up in that passing attack. Could that be a game against an Illinois team that shouldn't be as good as they were last year? Could that be a game where Purdue potentially pulls an upset? How about Iowa on the road? Iowa, a great football team, but if you can keep the score low, all it takes is one play, one game-changing play. You got Jerrick Gibson on this team, right? So you start to see what I'm saying. And Purdue has opportunities throughout the course of the season to maybe pull off an upset. That's something that I think happens by the end of the season. Third bold prediction I have this year in 2026 is that over the course of the season, Ryan Browne becomes the guy. And what I mean by that is that by the end of this season, as we look back on the year in January or whenever, we look back on the season and we say Ryan Browne really cemented himself as the future quarterback for Purdue. He proved that he is capable of being that quarterback into the next year. He was a guy that played good enough football that not just put Purdue in opportunities not to lose, but put Purdue in opportunities to win. That's what I want to see this year from Ryan Browne. Down the stretch of games, and there were moments where Ryan Browne looked good, I thought. Obviously, the stat sheet doesn't really reflect that. 10 interceptions and just 9 touchdowns on the year. I thought there were times where Ryan Browne did look good. And it really stems from like the yardage was great the first couple of weeks. There were some good touchdown throws. The Armand Branch, Ryan Browne connection was really going well. But then down the stretch of football games, it just seemed like Ryan Browne didn't have a clutch gene. It seemed like he would do the worst possible thing down the stretch of games, especially when Purdue was in tight games against Minnesota. He throws an interception at the end of that one that very likely cost Purdue the game. There were things to Ryan Browne that need to be fixed. I'm not denying that. But I look into 2026 and I see a system that's tailored a lot better for what Ryan Browne is, the type of quarterback that he wants to be. And I hit on this a little bit earlier, but Ryan Browne is that type of guy that can really improvise well. He's the type of guy that can get it done on his feet. In the option, I think that he's very good. In the play action, he can definitely improve, but is still a pretty good player. The issue is, you can't do those things when you're down, right? And that's what Purdue ran into last year. Is they were down so much of the game, he just had to go into the shotgun and air the ball out. That won't be the case this year for Ryan Browne, I don't think. And then you have the running game behind him and Jerrick Gibson. You have Fami Ijeobi. Those are going to be guys that make life a little bit easier and give Ryan Browne more opportunities to do what Ryan Browne is good at. Does that mean he's going to become the guy this year? Not necessarily. That's on paper and football is played on grass, but I do have a hunch that Ryan Browne will take a jump this year and Purdue fans will view him as the guy at the conclusion of this season. The final bold prediction I have this year for Purdue is that Elo Madoze is going to get his career high in sacks. Now, his career high in sacks going up until this point was 6.5 sacks. He achieved that at Army whenever he transferred over to Georgia. No sacks, didn't really get involved a whole ton within that Bulldog defensive front. But I did a whole episode yesterday about this and why I think that just Curry Smart wanting him to come to Georgia speaks more of Elo Mendoza than him not necessarily playing at Georgia because of the immense amount of talent they have on that defensive line. So I look into 2026. I see him being that probably the biggest pass rusher, the most involved pass rusher for Purdue this year. I think there's a real opportunity for him to get 7. Now, that's a big number. He would have to average right around half a sack a game, a little bit more than half a sack a game. I think he could do that. I think he could put up a couple against Indiana State. I think he put up 1 or 2 against Wake Forest. There are games where Elo Mendoza is going to have an opportunity to pick up sacks. So saying he gets 7 sacks, I don't think is out of the realm of imagination. So I am going to say Elo Mendoza will end up leading Purdue in sacks, get his career high in sacks as well in 2026. So those are my bold predictions. Let me know once again what you think about them. But coming up here next, we're getting into one of those games where I said maybe Washington could be on upset watch. It's Washington, it's Purdue, continuing our preview series. Coming up here next on Locked On Boilermakers. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel's giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. And best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season because daily dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep, and now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pick. I've been using Jordan Walker from my Cardinals all season long on daily dingers, and he's given me a lot to be excited about with quite a few home runs on the year. So are you ready to play your game? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a home run. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. Our 7th game in our Purdue regular season preview series comes today, and it's the Washington Huskies. Washington versus Purdue. It's going to be a fun game that comes in the 7th game of the year, week 8, including that bye game. So we'll see how things play out for Purdue against Washington and this one. But I did want to do a little bit of a preview of this team and ultimately how I view Washington going into this year. Obviously, the big storyline is Damon Williams back for another year at Washington. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the Big Ten, but in all of college football. And I truly think he's going to be one of those guys in contention for maybe even a Heisman at the end of the year, depending on how well Washington does. So this is certainly a very good team by Jedd Fisch. He's trying to take over for Kalen DeBoer, trying to become the next great Washington Huskies coach. You got Ryan Walters on staff over there. If I'm not mistaken, Barry Odom's brother is on staff over there. This is a team that last year Purdue played, and Purdue played them at the point in the year where it seemed like the team had already just given up. It was 49-13. Malachi Singleton was the starting quarterback in that game. Ryan Browne threw 6 passes, 1 of 6, 17 yards in that one. Purdue couldn't run the ball. Washington just shut down Purdue defensively. And I think the Washington defense will be good again this year. Damon Williams last year at 257 yards, 2 touchdowns on the game. So definitely made good work of Purdue secondary. And Jordan Washington averaged 21 yards per carry, 108 yards and a touchdown on just 5 carries last year against Purdue. So there's a lot you can look at from last season and say, well, this didn't go well. And it would make sense for a lot of Purdue fans or a lot of people out there to say, well, you're playing up against a Washington team again, has the same quarterback, has the same head coach, beat you 49-13 last year. Nothing's going to be different this year. And I definitely think Washington's going to win this game. I think that Purdue could hang around. I think Washington will ultimately end up winning this game, but I don't think it's as close and dry as people are making it out to be. I do think that Purdue will play this team a lot closer than what they did last year. First of all, the big concern comes from Washington on the offensive line. The offensive line wasn't great last year. They do return 4 out of 5 starters, but it was still an area that definitely needs to improve going into 2026. So if that is still an area of concern for Washington, that could potentially be something that Purdue is able to exploit because you got Elo Mendoza, you got CJ Madden coming off the edges. You have those great linebackers. Now, of course, Damon Williams can run, so the offensive line may not be as big of an issue as it would be for some other quarterbacks out there, but it's just something I want to throw out there. Obviously, Purdue's defense will be much improved. I don't think that Washington's going to be able to put up almost 50 and find the success in both the passing game and the rushing game the way that they were capable of doing against Purdue last year. But Washington still has a great offense and they're still going to be able to find success. The biggest thing I think this year for Purdue, the way they stack up against Washington, is that quarterback play. As I mentioned last year, Malachi Singleton, Ryan Browne, nobody could operate the offense well. So the offense, one of the worst offensive performances of the year against Washington. If Ryan Browne is able to get in, if this running game is able to get in, I think they can at least make it a ball game. Now, Washington is going to have to travel to Ross-Ade Stadium this year. It's not going to be the inverse where Purdue is traveling to the West Coast, which I do think is a massive factor. It's a bigger factor than what a lot of people make it out to be, is that West Coast trip or that Midwest trip from the West Coast. That is a big deal, and I do think Washington will run into that. Another big deal is that this game is on a Friday night on Fox, so it's a short week. All of those things considered, I think a lot of those things do play into Purdue's favor. Once again, pound for pound, Washington is a much better team than Purdue. But as I see it right now, I think this is a game where Purdue can hang around for the first half. It'll be a game where maybe some of the different media outlets, some of the different social medias are posting, oh, Purdue hanging around, Washington on upset watch. And then eventually in the second half, Damon Williams starts to get control of the game. He starts to take over. The offensive line starts to get settled. They start to be able to push Purdue's defensive line back, and ultimately Washington will come away with a victory in Ross-Ade. But this is one to watch. It's going to be one of the biggest games of the year, especially dependent on how Purdue starts out their season. If they can beat Minnesota, if they can beat Wake Forest, Indiana State, and 3-3 going into this one, it's going to be a big game because the opportunity to improve to 4-3. But if Purdue starts out the way they did last year, this could be another year where Purdue just gives up by the time they have to play Washington. I'm hoping that's not the case because I expect this one to be a very fun game at Ross-Ade for a variety of different reasons. And I cannot wait for college football to get kicked off. It starts up in just 8 days. It starts out in 8 days now. Purdue against Indiana State at home, Ross-Ade. I can't wait. So I'll be back here tomorrow for more Purdue content as we get into football season. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment. All that really helps me out a ton as we want to continue to grow here on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, whatever your preferred podcast platform is, make sure you like, subscribe, or make sure you leave 5 stars on that. That also really helps out a ton. But that's all I got for you guys today. So until tomorrow, as always, boiler up, hammer down.